Hey, this is Mike from the Run Testers, and in this video we have posed the question: if we had a 5k race to do tomorrow, what would be the first shoe that we would look to grab? And ultimately, if we couldn't find that shoe, what would be the runner-up? Now, I have posed this question to the rest of the Run Testers team, and these are the responses they came up with, along with sharing their current 5k race PBs as well. So let's get into it.
My pick for a 5k racing shoe would be the Nike Vaporfly 3. Nothing too exciting or novel about that pick. It's obviously a very popular racing shoe, but it's just really perfect for a 5k. It's very lightweight and nimble while still giving you that aggressive, propulsive punch that you get from a big stack carbon shoe like this, which benefits you even over 5k. I think you're still really enjoying that extra bounce you get there. You know, the difference between using a shoe like this over a racing flat over 5k, I think, is much smaller compared to like the marathon, where the extra benefits you get from a big shoe like this really come into play, but it certainly still helps over 5k. I think it's an amazing shoe to use for it. It's nimble, it's aggressive, it's not the most stable, but you can still attack corners at speed. And if I was picking one shoe to use for every race, maybe something like the Nike Alphafly would come into play. It's still a very good 5k shoe, but if you're just looking at 5ks, the lightness of the Vaporfly, I think, really puts it out just a little bit ahead. I've done like parkruns in the shoe, but also probably the biggest race around this distance I've done in the shoe was a 4.8k leg of a relay event, where I actually was pretty much on track for my 5k PB pace at a time that I really didn't think I was in that kind of shape. It's just an excellent shoe for smashing out short, fast races. In time, the real competitor here that might have come into play for this video for me, which I haven't tested thoroughly enough yet to put in, is the Asics Metaspeed Sky Paris, or indeed the Edge Paris. We haven't had that coming yet just because they are so lightweight. They certainly would be up there as contenders for me, but I've got a lot more of a track record with the Vaporfly, having done those short races in it and past models of the shoe, and it's just perfect for it because, like I say, lightweight, fast. That's what you want in a 5k. You don't have to overthink it. You don't have to think too much about comfort and bounce when you're just looking to set a fast time over that short distance. And then my second pick would be the Adidas Takumi Sen 10. Now, this I don't think has got quite the same explosive punch of the Vaporfly when you're on, good courses. So the course I ran the Vaporfly was like 3 laps of a cycling circuit, and that's perfect for the Vaporfly. Really big open road, closed road, obviously, sweeping corners. The Takumi Sen, I think, has a little bit more agility, and it's almost a 5k race you'd have for all those races which aren't on perfect courses, or park runs and stuff like that. Like my local park run is a couple of laps of a course which can be a bit slippy. There's a couple of sharp turns, and lots of park runs are like that. And actually, a lot of 5k races have a few little turns like that, and that's where the Takumi Sen really comes into its own, because it's that little bit lower stack. It's very nimble and aggressive around corners. You can really attack corners hard in the shoe and not really lose too much pace. And then the low stack feel of it means you can really pick up your feet again and start accelerating again once you have gone around the corner. It's also got really good continental rubber outsole, which gives you good grip if you are thinking about things like all-weather paths in parks and that kind of thing. So it's a very practical 5k races for lots of the races you'll do maybe that aren't necessarily on perfect courses, when you're going flat out for a PB. So the Vaporfly would probably be the shoe I'd pull on if I went down to Friday night under the lights in Battersea Park and did a couple of circuits of a perfect course, going all out for a PB, having prep for it. The Takumi Sen's probably the 5k racer you use week in, week out if you are going down a local park run or doing a little club race over 5k, something like that. This really has the chops to run very fast, and I think you're losing a lot compared to the Vaporfly, but when you're on those perfect courses, the extra punch you get from the Vaporfly does come into play, which is why I give it the edge slightly. Takumi Sen would be another shoe to consider though for 5k races.
So I actually found this pick really difficult because I have a lot of race shoes that I use for park runs every week as well as 5Ks. And to be honest, there's not a lot in it for those shoes for me. There's maybe a couple that I go for more than other shoes, but I did have a big pile of shoes that I would often pick for park run just because I like wearing them and I don't see a massive difference when I'm running 5Ks. But when it comes to my top pick, and this is probably a strange one for some people because it's not really a shoe that everyone associates with 5k distance or shorter distances, but it's still the Nike Alphafly 1. And the reason for that is when I started running in the Alphafly, I was running in the Vaporfly quite a lot. That was my main shoe for every distance, basically. And I was using the Alphafly for longer distance events, so half marathons and above. But what I found about it is that over time I started to gravitate more towards the Alphafly for short distance events as well, so for 10Ks and even 5Ks. And quite often now, if I go out for a 5K PB attempt, I will still go for the Alphafly 1. Now, I know it's a slightly chunkier shoe than what people normally associate with running a 5K, but for me it just works, and I always seem to just have the best races in this shoe. I love the fact that there's loads and loads of cushioning in it. I love the fact that it just feels so bouncy, and for my style of running and the speed that I run at, it just seems to work perfectly for me, and I opt for this over any of the Vaporflies as well at the moment. I actually prefer this to the Alphafly 3, but for me it's definitely a shoe that just works for my style of running, and I just love the feeling of bounce that you get from it. So I'm going for the Alphafly 1 still, even though it's for 5k distance. Now, the second pick I've got is a very different shoe to the Alphafly 1, and one that I didn't think that I would like that much. So that's the Adidas Takumi Sen 10. I know Nick's picked this as well as his runner-up shoe. It is a shoe that on paper wouldn't necessarily work very well for me. I like loads of midsole foam, I like bounce, I like cushioning, I like softness. And on paper, it doesn't necessarily look like this shoe will do that. But having run a couple of 5Ks in this shoe, I really, really like it. It is deceptive in how much softness you get in that midsole. So there's a nice little bit of cushioning in it, which is surprising considering the height of the midsole stack. And it's so fast. For 5K, it just works perfectly for me. I don't really necessarily need loads of cushioning for a 5K, but this just does just enough for it. But it feels so light and nimble that the first time I took this shoe out, I got exactly the same time that I got on the same course with the Alphafly 1. And I didn't think I had, but by the end of it, I looked at my watch and thought, wow, that's quite impressive, because I didn't think I would do so well in a shoe that was significantly less stack. I know Nick says this as well, but it is great for corners. It's great for traction on the ground. Sometimes you do a 5K and there's a switchback. If I'm in the Alphafly 1, it can be tricky to turn quickly because you've got that sort of unstable midsole in it. This doesn't. You can just really quickly just snap back and accelerate again. It's a great shoe. It's not as noticeably propulsive or bouncy as the Alphafly 1, but it's just light, nimble, and it's a fantastic shoe if you're looking for a really good short distance one. I probably wouldn't go over 10k in the shoe just because it doesn't have enough cushioning for me, but for that 5k distance, it's absolutely perfect.
Now, I don't really race a lot of 5Ks, and in reality, unless it's a really twisty course or you're facing some off-road bits like you'll get in many kind of park runs here in the UK particularly, I tend to reach for my regular carbon race shoe to go and attack that distance. So I'd definitely be looking at some of the older generation shoes that are in my big shoe pile at the moment as options. Like the Vaporfly 2, I think is a cracking 5k shoe. But right now, I think if we're looking at kind of more recent shoes that we've seen land, my top pick of the moment would be the Asics Metaspeed Sky Paris. Now, I've been doing a bunch of fast interval sessions in this shoe recently, and it's got a lot of the light, compact precision that I would look for in a shoe for these faster efforts like over the 5k. And the Flight Foam Turbo plus Piba midsole is really nice and punchy. I like the fact there's a real good stiffness to the rockered midsole here as well. That creates a really springy toe off. It's incredibly light on the foot, lighter than the Vaporfly 3 in fact, in my test shoe size. But it manages to be light without feeling too stripped back and too exposed. It delivers the main thing I look for in a shoe when I'm trying to push top paces, and that's a light disappearing feel on the foot, but without leaving your feet feeling too exposed, either with the landings that are too direct and too harsh, but crucially with uppers that hold well and feel comfortable overall. Now, I find the Paris delivers those good landings where you can feel the ground. You get kind of that nice kind of ground contact initially, but the midsole plate and rocker combo kicks in at the right time to help you kind of drive forward. And you definitely, I think, have to be a little bit more focused, have fast foot turnover. That gets more out of the shoe. This isn't one of the kind of big bounding carbon shoes, I think, for me anyway, like the Alphafly. And I like that overall, though, for shorter, faster efforts. Now, my runner-up pick is the Hoka Rocket X2. It's a well-balanced carbon racer that, for me, offers a ride that is a little reminiscent of the old Vaporfly 4%. That's a good thing. It's light, lively, it's compact, it's nicely agile. There's a snappiness and a stiffness that works with that rocker for a light, fast feel, and it puts plenty of spring right under the ball of your foot. Has a good race-ready feel overall. The ride is everything I think that you want in a snappy racer with a good dollop of versatility to boot. I find there's good control in tighter turns. One blessing of the really kind of glove-like, quite snug race fit here is that there's no slipping off the midsole even on tight turns at pace. It's among the lighter carbon shoes as well, and there's a nice precision to it when you're running with that all-out, well sort of intentioned, or on your best form, basically attacking a 5k. But the good thing as well is that it's not just good for 5ks either. It will happily take you up to the half marathon, and for some runners it may well even go beyond.
So if I had a 5k race tomorrow and I was looking for a shoe that I kind of wanted to run my hardest, try and run my quickest, I would be grabbing the Nike Vaporfly 3. And I'm sure not the only one in this video that's going to be talking about a Nike shoe. Now I actually haven't run my quickest 5k race in this shoe, not far off, but I still think this is the shoe I would go for because I think it has all the ingredients, I think, for me that make it a very, very good shoe to run at that kind of shorter 5k distance. I think first and foremost for me, I like the fact that it's nice and light, and I do think, it's not a shoe that you kind of struggle to get on as well, but it locks you in like you want on that kind of, when you are racing. And I think also as well, I like the fact there's a good amount of padding at the heel as well. So you're getting good lockdown there, as well as getting this nice kind of light breathable kind of shoe in general. And then you get into that midsole where you've got that Zoom X bounce. You get that bounce over that distance, and you really can when you are kicking up at your kind of quicker paces. But there is a kind of a more firmer edge to it at the forefoot, which I think gives you that kind of responsive, more aggressive and kind of propulsive feel. And I think that midsole just works really well when you are running your hardest. And obviously running hard in that 5k distance, you want something that kind of works, gives you that liveliness, but also gives you that responsiveness as well. And I think you get that in good amounts here on the Vaporfly 3. And then the outsole, there's not a huge amount of rubber here, but I think in terms of the race that I did do in this shoe, and it was kind of just shy of kind of sub 20 in it, the outsole was very, very good. I think from a kind of traction and gripping point of view, very solid. Kind of cording was very good as well too. And as I say, you're getting it from an outsole that is not massively, it's not massive amounts of rubber there. So for me, if I was doing a 5k race tomorrow and I wanted to go and try and run my hardest and my quickest, I would be picking the Nike Vaporfly 3. So if I couldn't locate my pair of Nike Vaporfly 3 for whatever reason, I think the other shoe that I would be scrambling around, or pair I would be scrambling around for, would be the Hoka Rocket XC, which is the shoe that I have run my quickest 5k race in. And I think that there's a lot of qualities there that I think make it a good shoe for that distance. Now, a little bit like the Vaporfly 3, it has a nice light fit and upper as well. So that's something I think I would want on a racing shoe, particularly at that distance. I think also as well, in terms of what you're getting in the midsole, it is not as, it's a different experience from the Vaporfly 3. It's a little bit softer. I think it's got a nice rocker there. I think it's a good side of kind of responsiveness on that shoe as well. So at that distance, I think you can really pick it up in that shoe, despite it being maybe a touch heavier than the Vaporfly 3. I still think it runs really nice and light at that distance. I think the outsole, well, in the 5k race that I did, when I kind of ran my kind of sub 20, it was a little slippy in places. I think generally the grip is very good on the Rocket X2. So I think all of the kind of qualities I would look for in a 5k race shoe, I think, are there in the Rocket X2 as well. And I'd be happy if I couldn't find my Vaporfly 3 to run in the Rocket X2, because I think at that distance it works really, really well. And I think despite it being a kind of half marathon, or kind of, potentially a shoe you could use in the marathon distance, which I think I would be maxing out maybe half marathon, I think it's a shoe that really kind of delivers a really good experience over that kind of shorter, kind of sharper kind of runs and distances as well. Okay, so there you have it. Those are our top 5k race shoes. Was there anything there that surprised you in terms of what we picked? Do let us know in the comments. As always, like and subscribe, hit that little bell to find out about our latest videos, and we'll see you for the next Run Testers video.